Roman Empire. For over 1,000 years, it was the center of the world, a civilization that built empires, conquered continents, and left a legacy that shapes our lives to this very day. But how did a small city-state on the banks of the Tiber River become the most dominant power in the ancient world? And, maybe more importantly, how did it all come crashing down? To understand the shocking betrayals and epic battles that defined a civilization, we have to go back to the very beginning, to a legend of two brothers and a she-wolf. Our story starts not with a history book, but with a myth. A story the Romans told themselves about their violent and supposedly divine origins. It's the tale of Romulus and Remus, twin brothers, sons of a mortal princess and Mars, the god of war. Their Gretanko, a usurper king who feared they'd one day challenge his throne, ordered them tossed into the Tiber River to drown. But fate or the gods had other plans. The basket carrying the babies washed ashore, where they were found and nursed by a she-wolf, an animal that would become an immortal symbol of Rome itself. Raised by a shepherd, the boys grew into strong, natural-born leaders. When they learned the truth of their birth, they returned to their ancestral home, killed the usurper king, and put their grandfather back on the throne. But their destiny was to build their own city. On the 7 hills overlooking the Tiber, they argued over which of them had the god's blessing to rule. That argument turned deadly. In a fit of rage, after Remus mocked his new boundary wall, Romulus killed his own brother. And so, on a foundation of fratricide, the city of Rome was born around 753 BCE. Its very origin story, a dark prophecy of the civil violence that would haunt it for centuries. This early Rome was a kingdom, ruled by a line of 7 legendary kings. These rulers, heavily influenced by the more advanced Etruscan civilization to the north, laid the groundwork for Roman society. They created the first senate and organized the army. Men like Talus Hastilius expanded Rome's power through constant war with their neighbors. The last king, however, was Tarquinius Superbus, or Tarquin the Proud. His reign was pure tyranny and ended around 510 BCE, with a scandal that would change Rome forever. The son of Tarquin, the Proud assaulted Lucrece, a noble Roman woman, an act that lit the fuse of resentment against the monarchy. Led by a man named Lucius Junius Brutus, the furious Roman aristocrats rose up, kicked out Tarquin, and swore they would never again be ruled by a king. In 509 BCE, the Roman kingdom died, and the Roman Republic was born. Power was now intentionally split. Instead of a king for life, Rome would be led by 2 consuls, elected every year, each with the power to veto the other. The system was designed to stop any one man from getting too much authority. The early years of the Republic were a desperate fight for survival. The brand new state was surrounded by hostile tribes, its existence hanging by a thread. Yet, through sheer grit and military discipline, Rome held on. They built the massive Servian Wall around 378 BCE to protect the city and began a relentless campaign of expansion. They fought and beat the Aquii, the Latins, and the Valsi, slowly extending their control over central Italy. Their toughest Italian rivals were the Samnites, a hardy people from the Apennine Mountains. The wars against them were long and brutal. At the Battle of the Caudine Forks in 321 BCE, the Romans suffered one of their worst humiliations when an entire army was trapped and forced to surrender, marching in disgrace under a yoke of spears. But for Rome, defeat was never the end. It was a lesson. They learned, adapted, and came back stronger. By 264 BCE, after centuries of fighting, Rome had conquered or allied with every power on the Italian peninsula. It was now a major regional player. But its ambition was about to run headfirst into a true superpower, dot across the Mediterranean. In modern-day Tunisia stood the city of Carthage. The It was a massive maritime empire with a terrifying navy, and incredible wealth controlling trade routes from North Africa to Spain. A collision between these two rising powers was inevitable. When it came, it was in a series of 3 epic conflicts we now call the Punic Wars. The First Punic War, from 264 to 241 BCE, was mostly a naval struggle for the island of Sicily. Rome was a land power with almost no navy, so they did the unthinkable. They captured a Carthaginian warship, reverse-engineered it, and built a whole fleet from scratch. They even innovated, adding a boarding plank called the corvustat. Let their superior soldiers turn a sea battle into a land battle on a ship's deck. After more than 20 years of brutal war and staggering losses on both sides, Rome won, claiming Sicily as its first ever overseas province. The peace was just a timeout. In Carthage, a brilliant general named Hannibal Barca swore an oath of eternal hatred for Rome. In 218 BCE, he kicked off the Second Punic War with one of the boldest military moves in history. He marched his army, complete with war elephants, across the Pyrenees and over the treacherous Alps, dropping into Italy itself and shocking the Romans on their home turf. For years, Hannibal tore across Italy, handing the Romans one devastating defeat after another. The worst was at Cannae in 216 BCE. There, though outnumbered, Hannibal pulled off a perfect double envelopment surrounding and completely annihilating a massive Roman army. The losses were catastrophic, a blow that would have broken any other state. But Rome refused to negotiate. They refused to surrender. While Hannibal was busy in Italy, the Romans opened new fronts, taking the fight to Carthaginian lands in Spain and Africa. This finally forced Hannibal to return home to defend Carthage, but he was decisively beaten by the Roman general Scipio, who had earned the nickname. The Second Punic War ended in 201 BCE, with Carthage stripped of its empire and power. Decades later, a paranoid and vengeful Rome, egged on by politicians like Cato, the elder who ended every speech with Carthage must be destroyed, launched the Third Punic War in 149 BCE. This wasn't a war of equals. It was an execution. In 146 BCE, Roman forces captured Carthage, sold its people into slavery, and systematically demolished the city. In that exact same year, Rome also destroyed the Greek city of Corinth, cementing its total mastery of the Mediterranean. An unimaginable flood of wealth, slaves, and land poured into Rome. But this incredible success carried the seeds of the Republic's own doom. The unity that was forged by fighting for survival began to crack under the weight of absolute power and limitless greed. The century after the Punic Wars wasn't a story about foreign enemies, but about rot from within. The Republic, designed for a small city-state, just couldn't manage a vast, multicultural empire. All that new wealth flowed into the hands of a small group of aristocrats, creating a massive gap between the super-rich and the dirt-poor generals who commanded loyal. Professional armies in distant lands began acting like independent warlords, their ambition greater than their loyalty to Rome. The stage was set for a series of bloody civil wars that would tear the Republic to pieces. The first man to truly break the system was Lucius Cornelius Sulla. After a brutal civil war against his rival, Gaius Marius, Sulla did the unthinkable. He marched his own army on Rome. In 82 BCE, after the horrifying Battle of the Colline Gates, where tens of thousands were killed, Sulla named himself dictator. He then started the proscription sophical hit lists. The names of his political enemies were posted in the public forum with a bounty on their heads. It was a reign of terror that shattered Republican traditions. A generation later, that lesson was embraced by 3 of Rome's most powerful men: Pompey the Great, Marcus Crassus, and a rising star named Julius Caesar. Around 60 BCE, they formed a secret alliance known as the First triumvirate Caesar, after conquering all of Gaul in a brilliant and brutal campaign, had a veteran army that was fiercely loyal to him personally. The Senate grew terrified of his power and ordered him to disband his army. Caesar knew this was basically a death sentence, so, in 49 BCE, he made a fateful choice. He led his army across the Rubicon River, an open act of rebellion. Caesar chased Pompey across the Mediterranean, eventually becoming the undisputed master of the Roman world. He was declared dictator perpetua, dictator for life. On the Ides of March, 44 BC, a conspiracy led by Marcus Junius, Brutus assassinated Caesar, stabbing him 23 times in the name of liberty. Their plan backfired, plunging Rome right back into civil war.
Help me! Someone help!
Caesar's heir, Octavian, hunted down the assassins, then turned on his ally, Mark Antony. Antony had allied himself with the Egyptian queen, Cleopatra. The final showdown came in 31 BCE, at the naval battle of Actium. Octavian won, leaving him as the sole ruler of the entire Roman world. In 27 BCE, he accepted the title Augustus. The Republic was a ghost. The Empire had begun. The reign of Augustus kicked off the Pax Romana, an era of peace lasting over 200 years. The Empire hit its absolute peak under Trajan, expanding to its largest size ever. His successor, Hadrian, realized the empire was too big and built a massive wall in Britain. This was a golden age of engineering, the Colosseum, the Pantheon, and vast roads, but the stability couldn't last. The 3rd century brought chaos, plague, and civil war. In one 50-year span, more than 20 barracks emperors were assassinated. Salvation came from Diocletian, who split the empire into east and west. Later, Constantine reunited it and founded a new capital, Constantinople, but the final split in 395 CE sealed the West's fate. Economically, the West was a basket case. Farms failed, and inflation ran wild. The army was now full of barbarian mercenaries loyal only to gold, not Rome. In 410 CE, the Visigoths did the unthinkable. They sacked the city of Rome. It was the first time the city had fallen in 800 years. The shock was immense. The end finally came in for 76 CE, when the barbarian Odoacer deposed the last emperor, a boy named Romulus. Odoacer sent the imperial robes to Constantinople. After nearly 1,200 years, the story of Rome and the West was over. But the idea of Rome lived on. The East thrived as the Byzantine Empire for another millennium. Rome's legacy is in our languages, our laws, our architecture, and our science. Rome's story is the ultimate epic of rise and fall. It's a cautionary tale about unchecked ambition and internal decay, but also an inspiring story of resilience and the power of ideas. The empire is gone, but its influence is, and will forever be, eternal. If you enjoyed this journey, be sure to like and subscribe for more deep dives. And let us know, what do you think was Rome's most fatal mistake? From a mythical founding to a collapse that ushered in a new age, the story of Rome is a testament to the heights humanity can reach. Thanks for watching.
Hit subscribe for more deep dives into the forgotten realities of history, tech, and luxury.